So you're a deist. How is that different from being an atheist?
I am not an atheist because I believe in God. Looking at the complexities of this universe and this life, I cannot escape the inevitable and only reasonable conclusion that this life is the product of God's creation, or at least His guiding hand. But I do not believe in an active, engaged God. Instead, I believe that God created us in this earth and let us live our lives by ourselves and equipped us with the necessary means for that. I do have one thing in common with atheists, though, which is that I reject all the religions out there, the so called revealed religions.
So at what point in time did God decide to disengage?
Well, long ago, I suppose, probably before man evolved into the intelligent beings we are now.
And why did he disengage? Did he lose interest?
I would not say that. That would not speak very well of his foresight or ability to predict. I mean, why would he create this world when he knows that he will not be interested in it at some point? Rather, I believe it was his plan all along to give us this wonderful life for us to live as we see fit. He gave us freedom and let us enjoy it with no interference.
But does it make sense for God to have gone to great lengths to create this immaculate universe, creating one layer on top of another in progressively more complex structures and life forms, and then put us on top of it all as the pinnacle of this wonderful creation, as the only intelligent species on this earth, perhaps in the universe, with the capacity to do good or do evil, to build or destroy, to compose language, to communicate, and then leave us with no sense of direction or purpose, no guidance as to what is right and what is wrong. And is that even fair?
No, that would make little sense. But that is not what I believe. I believe that He did give us guidance. It is the conscience that He created in us, or allowed to evolve in us by way of evolution, unique from any other creature. The things that make people, even non religious people, inherently righteous and kind. I do not believe that God sent just a few prophets, but rather so many. I believe that every man is his own prophet. God gave us reason, not religion, and reason is our guidance.
And how successful did that turn out to be?
What do you mean?
I mean, guidance as to what is right and wrong. You say God gave us guidance through reason, but to what extent is that true? Do people agree on what is right and what is wrong? Granted, humans have long agreed that one should not kill or steal and so on, but what about other things like treatment of women, for example, or minorities? Do we agree on that? And do modern societies agree with older societies on that? How about issues of race and color? There has been so much shifting of our moral values over the ages. Should women be treated equally to men, and what does that equality mean? The ranges of opinions here vary widely, even in this day and age. Abortion, sexuality, and sex outside wedlock. Modern society, at least in some places of the world, has a certain view of these things that is much different from that held by their own forefathers. Now, either we were in the wrong back then or we are now. So, how is it that God gave us guidance?
And that is part of the moral evolution that God allowed. It is part of the learning process, and we are getting there. But we cannot blame previous people for operating within their own moral system or for not being ahead of their time and resisting those kinds of things back then.
But that is not much solace for the victims back then, is it? If I were a member of a minority group and I was ill treated back then with the approval of the general society, I would feel that God has not given any guidance to humanity at all, or reason for that matter. It would seem as if he has forgotten them altogether and has forgotten me. The argument that God gave us guidance through reason is undermined by the fact that reason of humanity has not been constant at all. This implies injustice and undue suffering either back then or now. And you said that God gave us freedom to live our lives as we will. But with freedom must come accountability. Does it make sense for him to give freedom with no accountability, not to judge our deeds and give consequences?
He does, through us. We are the ones that do that. Don't you see that we have laws and we do hold evildoers to account? God gave us the reason and conscience to uphold righteousness and hold wrongdoers to account. Thereby, God did create accountability.
And how successful do you think that turned out to be? I mean, in your view, how successful has man been in preventing evil or even punishing corruption? How successful have we been in spreading justice and stopping oppression?
Well, in the last few hundred years, we have had a modern society with the rule of law, so I can say we have been somewhat successful.
But for the thousands of years that preceded those last 200 years or so, we have had the law of the jungle to a great extent.
Well, over many periods during human history, people did have unwritten laws, but I would agree with you that they were hardly enforced, and that power and wealth often did buy impunity. I have to admit that even in the most modern Western societies of this day, often the poor have less access to effective justice, while the wealthy can be at a clear advantage. I cannot say that we have achieved a satisfactory level of justice for all.
And then there are the impoverished autocratic societies. They can be extremely wanting in terms of rule of law. There you can witness a great deal of favoritism and discrimination based on status, profession, race, caste. It is even official and legally sanctioned in many cases. You would agree with me that even in this day and age, the world is rife with injustice, unfairness, corruption, and inequity, let alone during the old ages, and is full of victims of that injustice. Deism believes God created this wonderful world only to leave it rife with doubt, lack of guidance, injustice, and suffering. This is not a thesis that makes a lot of sense or implies a just or benevolent God, or a God who seems to have a purpose behind his creation.
But is your thesis any better? Remember that all the evil and suffering that you describe has been going on despite the prevalence of belief in revealed religions, and they have not been helping in preventing them. How do you explain that? In deism, injustice and suffering are happening in this world while God is disengaged, while in your revealed religion, they are happening despite his supposed involvement. Which theory makes less sense? Which theory is kinder to God and attempts to absolve him from the responsibility of allowing this suffering? If deism is bad, then your revealed religion thesis is worse.
Good thing that you admit that deism is a bad thesis. And I would agree with you that my thesis would be worse if it was as you described, but it is not. There is a big difference between my belief and yours. Your thesis ends there, but mine goes on. You believe that God disengaged and left it to us to alleviate suffering and spread justice and equality. And that is it for his part, whether we succeed in that or not. But my thesis goes on. The crucial difference between us is the belief in an afterlife. According to deism, God gave us freedom to live this life as we see fit without directives from revealed religion, but will not hold accountable those who choose to live it in a manner that is unfair to others. All those people who persistently sin or oppress others, some of them get punished, but so many of them throughout the ages have gotten away with it. Innumerable number of very bad people. In Deism, will there be punishment for them?
My religion, Deism, is not about punishment.
Well, let me rephrase. All their victims who have not exacted revenge in this world or did not receive compensation, will they get compensation in the future?
I don't believe so. But again, you are focusing on revenge and vengeance. In Deism, one learns to love and forgive, and enjoy life with whatever hand they are dealt, and not be consumed by bitterness and desire for revenge.
Well, forgiveness is certainly noble, but not always easy. And I would argue that belief in a hereafter where justice will be meted out is what helps in finding inner peace in this world, rather than having to forgive, as there is nothing else that can be done. But if you do not like the word revenge, let me rephrase. I do not necessarily mean revenge, but rather reckoning. Even if I am able to love those who hurt me and forgive them, I sure do need reckoning when I am wronged. I need an acknowledgement that what has been done to me was wrong. So many victims never get that in this world. The point I'm trying to make is that it seems to me incredibly haphazard and nonsensical that God creates all this wonderful order out of the chaos of the Big Bang, creates this amazing, supremely intelligent being that is man, allows him to create sophisticated and high functioning societies, gives him reason, as you say, and conscience, only for an outcome with a very mixed record of success and no accountability or reckoning at the end. An outcome that contains a great deal of chance and disorder. That seems to me nonsensical and an exercise in futility. One thing that amazes me is that the Quran did address deism, believe it or not, in the verse where God says, "Did you think that we created you in jest for naught, and that to us you would not be returned?" And then there's the issue of equality and social justice. I mean, let alone oppression, but things like the fair distribution of wealth. And then there's the unfairness of the circumstances. I mean, nature induced or circumstance induced unfairness and inequality and indeed pain. Do you think that wealth is distributed in an equitable manner on this earth? Even if one believes that wealth is indeed proportional to the skill and aptitude of each person, if we were to believe that, was it fair for God to create us with vastly different skills and aptitude? What about pain in this world? Why do we have it, and why is it so vastly varying from one person to another? Is that fair or benevolent of God?
Again, I would say to you that if your house is made of glass, you should not throw others with stone. I mean, one of the main problems with revealed religion is that they do not explain to us the existence of injustice and pain in this world in such a prevalent manner. They claim that a benevolent and merciful God is actively engaged with us, yet they do not tell us why He does not step in to level this injustice or to ease pain. So, how is He actively engaged? And what good is His engagement then? And how is He benevolent? Looks like you are attempting to turn your weak point on me.
Well, at least you agree with me that deism does not solve the predicament. You say that God is disengaged from this world. How else can you explain the pain and misery? But in disengaging, he is allowing this same pain and misery. Hence, your deism does not absolve God from this perceived cruelty, but rather implicates him. My religion does absolve him, though. Again, the fundamental difference between deism and revealed religion in that regard is the belief in a day of judgment. In that verse from the Quran that I just mentioned earlier, the second part of the verse refers to just that, the day of judgment. Did you think that we created you in jest and that to us you would not be returned? It is on that day of judgment when all injustice will be leveled, when reckoning will happen, when perseverance, endurance, and patience will be rewarded, and when pain and loss in this world will translate to joy and reward in the hereafter. Which is better, to tell the oppressed or disadvantaged in this world that it's tough luck for them and they need to learn to accept and love, essentially to suck it up, or to tell them that there is a day of judgment when reckoning will be achieved and justice will be absolute, that we are equal in that we all have an equal chance for eternal happiness by making the most out of the hand dealt to us in this world. And which speaks better of God? A belief that He postponed absolute justice and recompense, or that He gave up on them and allowed pain, despair, and inequality? Which belief upholds His justice and benevolence, and which undermines them? You want to exonerate God from perceived capriciousness, in that He sees pain and injustice and stands by idle, so to speak, only to implicate Him of that which you sought to acquit.
So why didn't he just unequivocally tell us what the true religion is? Why is it a mystery?
And by the same token, I can ask, why did He not let us know that He is disengaged and that deism is the true religion? Why did He create in us the religion gene and leave us prey to the illusion of revealed religions? Deism presents the same predicament, doesn't it?
Even if deism does not answer that, the question remains, why did he keep it a mystery?
It hardly is, far from it. But let me ask, why wouldn't He just show up in the heavens and reveal Himself and put the whole thing to rest?
Yes, that's right. And it is a serious question, one you should answer, not mock. Don't you see that this is an indication that he does not want us to subscribe to any religion? A sign of disengagement?
No, it is not. And I did not mean to mock. So let me answer this. Let me tell you what I believe. God created this marvelous universe, and He created angels, creatures who do nothing but worship Him and exalt Him all day long and all night long. This is innate to their character, ingrained in their creation. They witness Him and witness His manifestations continuously, and they have no worldly desires. They don't really sacrifice anything. And then God wished to create a different kind of creature, one that would worship Him in spite of being pulled down by worldly desires and competition, a creation that would love Him and demonstrate so by actually sacrificing for His sake, a creation that would believe in heaven and hell without witnessing them themselves, a creation that would embrace faith despite doubts being thrown at them. And God descended humans on earth where life had been evolving and told them, "You shall live here only a temporary life, in a test of your faith and sacrifice, of your belief and submission. And it is only temporary. The pain and misery will not last, neither will the happiness and indulgence. It matters little whether you live rich or poor, for your life on this earth is only a short transit, followed by an infinitely longer life, where belief and good deeds will be most generously rewarded, and where defiance and disbelief and evil will be severely punished. And God said that I shall show you plenty of signs of my presence and closeness. But do not be arrogant so as to demand seeing me in order to believe. God says in the Quran, they say, why was not an angel sent down with him? If we did send down an angel, the matter would be settled at once and they would be given no respite. And says in another verse, and those who do not expect the meeting with us say, why were not angels sent down to us? Or why do we not see our Lord? They have certainly become arrogant within themselves and committed great insolence, great arrogance, and pretentiousness. The day they do see the angels, no good tidings will there be that day for the criminals. God could have revealed himself all the time, or he could have created more angels who witness his manifestation directly and who would worship him and submit to him all the time. Or he could have kept a steady stream of prophets with clear, incontestable miracles. But he did not wish to do that. There would be little testing of faith if that was the case. This does not, this does not mean that God has made it a mystery. Far from it. For he has placed overwhelming signs of his existence in every page you turn when reading this wonderful book of the universe, whether you're studying the Big Bang or the life cycle of bees. And when you read the unchanged last book revealed to us, the Quran, and when you talk to God, you see overwhelming signs of his presence and closeness. And that test that God designed on this earth is not easy. For our desires and competition will get in the way, and sacrifice or contentment shall not be easy. Yet God said that he will make the test easy for those who have patience. He has not burdened us with that which we cannot bear, and he has ordained that a good deal shall be multiplied tenfold, while a bad one shall be readily forgiven with the slightest of remorse. And then there shall be a day of resurrection, when we are brought back to life, when absolute justice is meted out, to the extent we believe that if a beast of wild trampled upon another in this life, the roles would be reversed in the hereafter, such that justice in this universe would be absolute, and order in every corner of the universe would be restored. And when the mercy of God shines in his forgiveness on the slightest pretext, and when his pride and avengement shows in punishment of the persistently disbelieving or rebellious. This is my thesis in a nutshell, my solid belief, in fact. Now, you may not like this thesis, or you may think it is wild or lacks evidence, but you have to agree that it is solid and consistent, free from contradictions or nonsensical implications. A belief that reveres God, demonstrates his mercy and benevolence, and absolves him from any capriciousness, from any neglect. A belief that holds man in high regard and places man in a higher eventual abode.
But it rests on the concept of the day of judgment, on life after death, and I do not believe in that. That would be a wonderful thing indeed, very inspirational and motivational, very magical, but unfortunately also very unscientific. I cannot believe that there is life after death, that a decomposed body that turned into dirt will be reassembled again and into the same person. Revealed religions are nice, but contain so much silly things, unfathomable things, sometimes outrageous things. Life after death is foremost amongst them.
It comes down to that, doesn't it? But isn't the story of creation even more magical and inspirational, more unbelievable? You said you are not an atheist. If you believe that God created this universe, why do you find it unbelievable that He would recreate it again? As mentioned in the Quran, can man not see that we created him from a drop of fluid, yet lo and behold he disputes openly? And he presents for us an example and forgets his own creation. He says, "Who will give life to bones while they are disintegrated?" Say, "He will give them life who produced them the first time, and He is of all creation knowing." He who made for you from the green tree fire, and then from it you ignite. Is it not He who created the heavens and the earth, able to create the likes of them? Yes, it is so, and He is the knowing Creator. It is not a stretch of imagination by any means to believe that God can resurrect from death, if you believe that He created all of this from nothing. Again, I see deism holding the Lord in low regard, doubting His ability to give life after death, when they claim that they do believe that God did create man to start with. You gave him creation, but won't give him recreation?
But why would God create evil in the first place? To punish it? Did He not know from the onset that sinners would be sinners and the evildoers would be so? So why create them to start with? Why would He create evil in us? Why put that tendency in us?
Yes, God did create evil in our souls, but He also created good and commanded us to follow good and resist evil. And He also gave us a free will. And no one sins except by choice. Otherwise, it's not punishable, by the way. And on top of that, He gave us repeated chances for repentance and is eager to forgive us.
But still, why did He create evil in the first place? Why not just make us good?
And why did He create Satan? And why not just create us as angels? God designed the test like that. He willed to try us with this struggle between good and bad, on an individual level and on a societal level. And God designs the test as He wills, not as we do.
But why did He create bad people when He knew that they will end up in hell? Is that even fair?
Of course, it is fair, for God has given them free will and they chose to do evil or to defy God. And He gave them repeated chances for repentance and extended His forgiveness for anyone who asks for it. But those who insist on defiance will be punished.
Was it not more benevolent of Him not to create them in the first place?
I can speak for hours on the mercy and benevolence of God, and how He cherishes the good deeds and multiplies them and forgets the bad ones and forgives them. But think about the implication of your suggestion. You are basically saying that the mercy and benevolence of God should disallow Him from creating anyone who would defy Him or disobey Him. Because if someone disobeys God or chooses to do bad, then God will naturally have to punish them, and that would be cruel, that would be incompatible with His mercy and benevolence. If your logic was true, would that not mean that basically we would be guaranteed that no punishment will fall upon us? I mean, you and I have been created. We are humans. We know that we have been created. We have inclination to do good or do evil. We have a great sense of competition. And if your logic was true, that it is not fitting for God to create someone who will end up in hell, if that logic was true, then you and I would know for sure that no punishment will fall upon us, no severe punishment. Maybe a slight slap on the wrist every now and then, but nothing too severe, because that would be incompatible with God's mercy and benevolence. And therefore, you and I would know for a fact that our salvation is assured, is guaranteed. That if we choose to do good, we shall be rewarded, but if we choose to do bad, then we will really not be punished severely. That is not what God wanted. This is not how God wanted the test to be. And in His wisdom, this is not what He wanted. He wanted to create creatures who have the capacity to do good or do bad, who are given free will. And God is serious when He promises reward to those who choose to do good and promises punishment to those who do bad. How else can you bring yourself to truly fear God if you know that, well, according to your logic, He's not going to punish me severely anyway? And is that even fair to those who resist their inclinations and desires and bring themselves to do good in this life? Is that fair to them? Look, the point is, God does what He wills, and He chooses to design the test as He wills, and He does not need to justify His actions for us or explain to us their wisdom. And while we are free to inquire only so as to understand, not to challenge, we should not demand explanation or justification.
Blind submission, eh?
No, you should ask difficult questions of the kind of, how do I know that there is a God? How do I know that He did indeed order this or that? But once you establish that God did indeed command something or ordain something, then you should submit whether you see the wisdom in it or not.
Well, I wish to understand why the test in the first place. Why not create us all in heaven? And why the suffering?
He could have done that, but He wished otherwise. And again, He does as He wills, not as we do. But let me ask you a question. Suppose you have a kid you love. Would you like him to be a millionaire? To give him a lot of money that makes him comfortable for the rest of his life?
Yes.
Now imagine that there are two ways he can achieve that. You can either give him the money or he can earn it. Which one would you choose?
Well, in fact, I prefer just to give him the money instead of having to go through a great deal of hardship and waste half of his life making his wealth.
Fair enough. But suppose he will only spend a comparatively short time to make his wealth, say 50 years, and then he will enjoy that wealth for 50,000 years. He will have to endure hardship during those first 50 years, but you will help him. Would you rather have him just receive the money from you, or have him earn it and spend the rest of the 50,000 years with a sense of pride and achievement?
Have him earn it, of course. That would be better.
Well, maybe that is why God made that test. It is not just a test, it is a very significant thing, and one of the reasons for it may be for the benefit of the select few who will pass it. Again, I am not purporting to know the wisdom behind God's will, and neither am I demanding that I do. I do submit in the hopes that when God sees my humility, He will grant me understanding.